the October 3rd Finance Committee, School Board Committee to order at 6 p.m. First item is we have a member that is virtual. Ms. McGowan, you are virtual?
Yes.
And you are not able to attend. It's physically impossible for you to attend tonight?
Correct.
Okay, and you're the only one in the room?
Yes.
Okay.
Only adult in the room.
Alrighty, and all votes will be roll call votes. Move forward. Alrighty, first item is item A, roll call.
Member Bollier?
Here.
Member Cusimano?
Here.
Member Bellows?
Present.
Member Downs?
Here.
Member Harrington? Here. Member McGowan?
Here.
Quorum. Okay. Item C, approval of September 5th minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Cusimano, second by Mr. Boyer. Discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Roll call.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Roll call vote.
Member Bollier?
Yes.
Member Cusimano?
Yes.
Member Bellows?
Yes.
Member Downs?
Yes.
Member Harrington? Yes. Member McGowan?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item is general business administration. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
And I will turn it right to Ms. Combs.
Thank you. Good evening. I promise not to be as lengthy as David. For all of you watching at home. I'd like to start first by addressing the fact that all of the information that I'm going to discuss tonight has been attached to your agendas. I'd like to start with a topic of revenue. We have a budgeted revenue of $74.79 million. Fiscal year to date, which is July 1st through September 30th, we have accrued $25.67 million in revenue. We are 27% into the fiscal year and have reached 34% of our budgeted revenue thus far. I also would like to point out that all of our revenue buckets that you see in the line items of your reports are not necessarily funded on a monthly basis. For example, in the area of regular day tuition, where we have $2.6 million budgeted, we do not post those revenues until typically January, February, April, and August. And for another example, RSA 31 state funding, again budgeted at $5.8 million, and we don't post that until typically July and February. So I just wanted to point it out that you're not necessarily seeing all of the revenues going to hit, although we are ahead of our budgeted revenue on a fiscal basis. Any questions on any of the details of the revenue? Great. Moving on to expenses, similarly again, as we have a break-even budget, we are budgeted $74.79 million in expenses. Fiscal year to date, we have incurred $17.4 million in expenses. Again, we are 27% into the fiscal year and have spent and committed, and I'd like to kind of go over some of the reports. If you see the column that's called encumbered, that means committed to pay but have not paid yet. So you can use the word encumbered or you can use the word committed. So we are 27% into the fiscal year and have committed to spend 32.6% thus far. I'd like to break this down a little further on the salary expense lines. Again, 23%. We are in line with 23% spent fiscal year to date. And we will discuss a little bit more about the savings that we have in open positions a little bit further down the road, further down on the agenda. Point of note again, workers' comp is at 100% of budget, and that is because we have paid our annual premium already, which is effective through June 30th of 2025. Moving on to non-salary expense, we are at 60% of our budgeted non-salary expense. However, this can be explained by the fact that we have, as I mentioned, the word encumbered, $7 million, which has not been paid yet. So if we look at it on an actual payments basis, we have spent $4.5 million of our budget, or of the budget, which is $19 million, and 23.9% which is below the 27% of the elapsed time. So did that kind of make sense to everybody? Good. Point of note, in operation plant insurance liability is at 140% because two reasons. One, we paid our annual property and liability insurance for the year. And two, we have a pending claim for the high school music room damages that we expect to be reimbursed by our carrier for, which is currently $104,000. Any questions there? Great,
Can I ask a quick question?
of course.
What was the damage in the music room?
Flooding.
Oh, okay. That's right. Thank you.
A little bit about the grants, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as I have my Director of Federal Grants here today to do a small presentation for you. Our grant revenue is currently at 71% of our budgeted revenue, and we are at 83% of our budgeted expenses. In the grants, we of course expect to, and our goal is to break even and to spend all of the money that we receive. We have discussions and have been having discussions of obviously going to our grant funding first before we incur any expenses that will directly hit our P&L. Similarly, on fruits and veggies, again, the goal is to break even. We've encumbered only $2,548 and spent $1,159. 3/4 of that is attributed to food expense, and $200 is an allocation of salary expense, which is a portion of the time that's spent fulfilling the fruits and veggies program.
I have a question.
Sure.
On the federal grant revenue,
Yep.
what's the homeless line? What is that? On the first page, fourth up from
For
the bottom.
expenses or?
Revenue, it's fourth up from the bottom.
3585.
Yeah, 3585. What line is that? What is?
I don't know the details of that, but perhaps Mackenzie, our
That is our homeless donation line. So it's money that we have that is donated to us and comes from other sources. There's a couple different ones on here. I'm trying to find it, it's very small print. Because I might be misspeaking because we have two. One of them was an ESSER-funded homeless grant that was separate from all of our ESSER funding. And so that actually might be what that is, now that I'm looking, I had to make it bigger, I'm sorry. So I misspoke, it's not our donations line, now that I'm looking closer, I can see the account line. We had an ESSER homeless grant for 2 or 3 years, and that's what that funding was. And we predominantly used almost all of it for transportation to offset the transportation cost for our kids who are experiencing homelessness.
Okay.
And we did spend every penny of that.
Moving on to CIP, I did point out in my summary, my snapshot summary of the questions from our last meeting together. What you are seeing is a life-to-date report. So when you're looking at some of these line items, David and I have discussed cleaning up and what we're calling inactivating some of the ones, the projects that have been closed. But what you are seeing are some projects that have already been closed. And what I did in the attachment in the detail is just gave you a report of just the current CIP projects. We have expended $30.9 million on our CIP bond thus far and encumbered $24.8 million for a total of 90% of our budgeted expense. And which is actually in line with where we were at last year, although they didn't do each other. From a cash perspective, our cash CIP expense, we have encumbered and spent a total of $4 million or 94% of our budgeted projects. Cool. You guys are easy. Moving on to, I wanted to explain our year-to-date financial snapshot, which I included this month, and will do so going forward. This was a request from a committee member last month, and basically what it is a snapshot of our year-to-date FY25, as it can be seen at the top, and for comparison purposes, Below is a comparison of where we were at the same point in time in FY '24. So if you happen to have that open, for example, our revenues fiscal year to date this year, we are at 34%, in line with last year at 35%. So quite frankly, I think that most of them are in line. Our lunch program is at 3% in revenues as opposed to 5% last year. And our lunch program expenses is 62% as compared to 70% last year. So I kind of will use this as like a little gauge as well, and I hope that this is a useful tool for you. I also included a little bit of explanations for that. Oh, I think I skipped the school budget. Okay. October projections. Considering our open positions at the moment, and if none of them were to be filled by the end of October, I am forecasting a vacancy savings of $160,000. This does not include any of the positions that we have placed in the pocket. So does everybody kind of understand? No questions? Great. Okay, fiscal year to date,
Mr. Busman,
yes.
So that's 160,000, and that, I think it was 110, we were already over budget. It has already been pulled and stashed aside to pay for the teacher salaries at jobs we kept, correct?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that?
From
That
last
was
year.
12 positions.
The 12 positions.
So we did move, per the approval, we did move 4 para positions from the pocket position that did not affect the open positions that we have.
No, so last year we had
Oh.
12 positions that
Yes,
we needed. That money has already been set aside.
If I may, Mr. Chair. That's the 11 position vacancy that we are taking into account, that you and I spoke about.
Correct,
Yes,
so
and
that-
she's taking that into account.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I wanted.
Mr. Harrington.
I was just gonna say, they'll be reconciled at the end of the
I'm just making sure we're,
year.
Any more questions before we move on?
On a fiscal year-to-date basis, I am forecasting a vacancy savings of $350,000 at this point. So that's cumulative from July 1 through the end of October. If none of the positions that I'm reporting in October, we would have a $350,000 positive impact of savings. Okay. Next. Some information requests that were made at the last meeting that I'm providing to you. One of the questions was some information, more elaborate information on the Jewel Fund. The original amount of the Jewel Fund was $4.7 million. I can give you the whole dollar amount if you're interested. Our life-to-date expenses are $339,000. $323,000 of that has been spent on equipment, and $16,000 of that has been spent on salary expense. We've encumbered $410,000 in equipment, which leaves us, as of September 23rd, $3,989,327 still available for us to spend. The start date was January 2024. The end date is 5 years with the opportunity to extend 10 or whenever the funds are depleted. Point of note, the city is anticipating receiving another $2 million for the district over the next few years. Plus, they were notified of another settlement of a manufacturer named Altria for $1 million for the district that we will soon be receiving. So the total from these assessments will be in excess of $7 million. Questions? Yes. Okay. Another question that was posed in regards to the grant that we graciously accepted for the $9,300 for the Reach Preschool project from Crotched Mountain Foundation. The question was, who was the writer of the grant? I'd like to report that Stacy King, Special Education Preschool Coordinator, worked diligently to submit the grant. So thank you to Stacy. Would you like me to go over the follow-ups from the prior month, or it's completely up to you? Anyone?
Yes? Yes. Yes,
Sure.
please.
I added a financial snapshot, fruit and veggies. The DOE fruit and veggie program runs on a fiscal year of October to September. We can use FY '24 funds to cover expenses incurred in September and October. At the close of FY '24, we had $47,000 remaining to be used. Funding for this program is use it or lose it. Upon approval of new funding, a new revenue budget will be entered into use. Another request was, what was the status of the donation of the $500 per elementary school to be used, which was bequeathed by a trustee to cover negative balances for reduced school scholars. I've given a list, and we'll go over the balances, as well as what the current negative balances are per school. William Allen School's balance is $23.90. However, they received another $500 anonymous donation, and their negative balances is $47.85. School Street School still has all $500. Has $500, but they received an additional $500 donation from the PTA, and they have a negative balance of $26.20. McClellan School has $500 and a negative balance of $70.95. Maple Street Magnet School has a balance of $467.70 and a negative balance of $10.65. Gonick School is $266.45 with a negative balance of $17.20. East Rochester School has $378.57 with a negative balance of $17.40, and Chamberlain School has $0 left with a negative balance of $38.55. Please note that these balances may have changed from my last update. Would like to report that a budget transfer has been done from the para pocket to one early intervention center, one HR, and one finance operations admin. This transfer was done on September 26th. And from instructional salaries, the middle school to new equipment high school, $40,000 was performed on September 23rd. And the last is an explanation as to why there still shows activity or appears to be activity on the Gonick School roof trusses. This was a deauthorization of general fund assigned fund balance from 2019 that is, of course, still showing up on this because it's a life-to-date report. This project has been closed out and flowed through the 1501 general fund 5 years ago. And that's my follow-ups. Moving on to a grant. I'd like to present to you with appreciation and gratitude. The Robotics Education Development Program has granted Spalding High School the amount of $14,500. This was submitted by Michelle Halligan Foley, and is to be used no later than May 30th, 2025. We have to make a motion
Yeah.
to, okay.
Mr. Boyd.
Make a motion to accept the Robotics Education Development Program grant in the amount of $14,500.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Boyer, second by Mr. Sumano. Any more discussion on that? Alrighty, roll call, please.
Member Bollier?
Yes.
Member Kusumano?
Yes.
Member Bellows?
Yes.
Member Downs?
Yes,
Member Harrington?
Yes.
Member McGowan?
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. I believe there was a last,
No, good question.
Mrs.
You know,
Deans.
I'm curious, could we at some point, 3 or 4 months ago, once the program was up and running, what the instructors are doing and how they're using that money? Bring them in and give us a little update on it.
That'd be great. I know they have robotics, they start that in the middle schools, which is great. Back over to you.
last minute addition to the agenda, which I believe you may have. We, just today, I believe it was, received a donation from Hannaford for a book donation kiosk in the amount of $519, with a note that kindly says, please use for the school that has the most need.
I don't believe any development gets under any money,
Cool, thank you.
I believe, for our policy.
You good?
I thought all donations and grants had to be
we'll cover it, just to,
Make a motion to accept the donation from Hanford Supermarket in the amount of $519.
Second.
motion by Mr. Boyer, second by Mr. Simano. Any more discussion on that?
Was that a valued amount, or it was an actual?
It's a money order check.
It is a money check, okay.
All those in favor? Roll call, please.
Member Bollier?
Yes.
Member Cusimano?
Yes.
Member Bellows?
Yes.
Member Downs?
Yes.
Member Harrington?
Yes.
Member McGowan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And I believe last but not least, last month you inquired a little bit about our grants and what we may have. So I have the pleasure of introducing our Federal Grants Director, Mackenzie Harrington
Baycode.
Baycote, and she will present to you some information on our open grants.
Okay, hi, thank you. And when Adriana, Anna, and I were talking about this, it occurred to both of us that maybe you've never been given this information. So I'm not sure if you've had someone come and talk to you about this in the past. I'm just in my 3rd year, and I know that I have not done that yet. So what I did, if you click on this spreadsheet, it's actually not a spreadsheet, it's a Word document. I tried to make this as user-friendly as I can. So federal discretionary funding is money that we get as a school district. It's not money that we compete for or have to ask for. It's automatically given to us by the federal government, which flows through the New Hampshire Department of Education. And so what I've done is I've parceled out every single one of our title funding sources. And so the first one is Title I on here. And the language that I've put in here comes directly from the New Hampshire Department of Education, which comes from the federal government. So this is not our personal description, this is their description of what this funding is for. So Title I provides resources to schools and districts to ensure that all of our children have a fair, equitable, and significant opportunity to obtain a high-quality education, etc. And the way that they determine the way that we use this money, they have a threshold. So any school within a district or any district who has a free and reduced lunch eligibility rate of 40% or higher is eligible for Title I. Our district as a whole does not. I think we're right at maybe 35 or 38 as a district, but we have individual schools that do. And so I put underneath, we'll get to the numbers in a second, but underneath I have outlined who our Title I schools were for the 22-23 year, the 23-24, and then our current year, because they do change over time. And so this year, as an example, we still have School Street, William Allen, East Rochester, and Chamberlain, who have been a Title I school probably as long as they've been getting Title I money. Gonick is a new addition. They are at 47% free and reduced lunch, which is significantly higher than they've been in the past, and that could be for a variety of different reasons. So we have to take that money, and it is allocated out to all of those individual schools and can only be used in those schools. Within that, there's a rank order, and you have to use a per pupil cost, and the school who has the highest free and reduced lunch is School Street. They're at 58.18%, so we have to put towards that Title I funding for that school. It has to be the highest per pupil for School Street. Then next we have William Allen. They're at 52%, so then they have the second highest amount of per pupil funding from Title I that goes to their school, and we can't twist it, so I can't put more towards William Allen than School Street per pupil. Then we have Gonick. They're at 47.17%. East Rochester, 37.91%, and then Chamberlain is at, oh no, I'm out of order. Chamberlain's fourth, 42.36%, and then East Rochester at 37.91%. And so, those are our Title I schools. Please ask any questions as I'm going along. So, the money that we get for Title I, it basically runs on a 15-month schedule. So it comes down the pipes July 1st. We don't actually get that money from the department until maybe mid-July. It's whenever they figure out how they're going to allocate their funding. The funding allocations to states change every year, and then they have to take that and within their own formula figure out how it gets divvied out to the district. So it's different every year. It's based on enrollment, it's based on free and reduced lunch numbers and how those change across the state. So you can see a couple years ago, we got $300,000 less than we are getting this current year. So there's always a little bit of an overlap, but typically it's a 15-month and it ends the following September 30th. The next one, this is an extension of Title I. It's called Comprehensive School Improvement. This is very targeted money that the department gives only to schools who have been identified as comprehensive, in need of comprehensive school improvement. Our only school that is in that status is Bud Carlson Academy. They've been in that status since 2018. They are continuing in that status because of their graduation rate. They're not able to meet the required threshold because of the demographics and it's an alternative high school. So they get money allocated every year just for them. They use it for a variety of different things, professional development, supports for kids, pretty much anything that falls in line with the department's approved improvement plan that they've developed. Okay.
Pardon, thank you.
Yes.
Is there a limit to the number of schools in our district that can receive Title I funding?
It's based on the free and reduced lunch numbers. So right now, those are the only schools that qualify, but that's a really good question because we have the ability to submit a waiver to the Department of Education. Let's say we have a school that's at 39.9%. We're like, they're so close. We can complete a waiver, we submit it to them, they approve it or don't approve it. If they approve it, they allow us to go into what's called targeted Title I status for a year, which is pretty tricky. It basically means that if you're eligible for free and reduced lunch and we're in the same school and I'm not, only you can access those Title I dollars, I cannot. But that's a great question. Yeah.
Does it, are the requirements for staffing different in Title I schools than other schools?
That is a really great question. So we are annually required to complete what's called a Title I comparability report. It's pretty comprehensive where the state is looking to make sure that we're maintaining our same positions across all of our schools per pupil and per staffing. So we have to show that Gonick and McClellan, as an example, have the exact same staffing ratio regardless of their status, and then any Title I is in addition to that. It's meant to be supplemental to what we have for everybody, but that's a perfect question.
I asked, just because I had heard that there's a limit to the number of schools in the district that could be Title I, so it sounds like that's not true. I'd also heard that you have to have a bachelor's degree to be working in a Title I school?
Title I schools have, so I'll use paras as an example because every para in a Title I school has to be Para 2 certified. Not every staff member has to have a bachelor degree, but they do have to be a highly certified educator. We do have some on an alt process, but eventually they have to get into that status. Yeah. And just to piggyback your other question, same thing with materials and supplies that we provide to Title I schools has to be in addition to what we do for everybody else. Yeah. So the next page, it's pink, is Title II, and this is predominantly, it's not predominantly, it's all meant for professional development for our staff and retention and recruitment of our staff. And so we cannot use this money for any student supports or anything like that. It is very strictly related to professional development. We use it for our mentoring program, new teacher orientation, a lot of different things. Conferences that we send people to, the bullying that Annie had in August, that all came from this grant. We use it to have presenters come in, CPI trainers, anything like that where we're really looking to embed train the trainer models in our schools. We use this money to support that. Now, Title II, and then the ones after this as well, are on a 27-month timeline. So at any given time, we have 2 years, if not 3 years, of that funding at the same time. So we don't just have 5 or 6 titles happening at one time. We have 2 or 3 of each of those at the same time. So let's just use the 22-23 year because we're just now closing that one out. It started July 1st of 2022, goes until September 30th of 2024. So just to give some context to that, we've always got this money sort of flowing. Title III, this is language instruction for our English learners and immigrant students. Same thing, 27-month cycle. We have 3 categories we're required to use this for. One is language instruction, the second one is professional development, and the third one is family engagement. Okay, next one, Title IV. This is like the opposite of Title II. This one can only be used for student supports, has to be supplemental, so in addition to what we're already doing. We are using this funding right now for a social worker at the middle school, for our new education technology coach that we're really excited about. We're using it for a couple of other random things. We have supported, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, BCA does this Acadia Field Ecology course. It's really cool. They take the kids up to Acadia for a long weekend. We use this money for that because it's supplemental. We use it to support the Jumpstart program, Greater Pathways. our CTE summer exploratory stuff. So anything that's supplemental for kids. The new robotics program at the middle school, that came out of this. We started it as a pilot program after school, and then it just took off.
Thank you. So Title I, that's needs-based, essentially. Does that apply to Title II, III, and IV? We're receiving those because of our need or any
Nope,
district?
great question. So we get that money regardless. However, the department requires that we complete a needs assessment. So we complete a needs assessment. It's every 3 years for Title IV, but beyond the needs assessment, they're looking to ensure that we are targeting our schools in our district who are already in a targeted status. And we have a couple of other schools in that status. We have 3 schools in what's considered additional school improvement status. It's not the same level as CSI as Bud Carlson. It's significantly lower, but it's still significant. So Rochester Middle School, William Allen School, and East Rochester. We do not know if they've exited that status yet. The department hasn't given us that information for this year, but they're looking to see that we're targeting those schools first. And so the middle school is a perfect example. They're looking to see how are we supporting the middle school with our additional title funding, knowing that they're in need of that support. Yeah. Okay. Next one, IDEA funding. So this is our individuals with disabilities education funding. It's pretty straightforward. We use this predominantly for staffing or for any contracted services that we need to meet students' IEPs. It's very straightforward. Again, this is also in a 27-month cycle. We get IDEA preschool funding. It's almost kind of comical because it's not a lot of money at all for the needs that we have, but we do use preschool funding pretty much solely to fund a part-time. It's part of one of our preschool teachers' time. I did just bullet out really quickly, and Adriana touched on some of this earlier, a bunch of our grants that just closed or have closed, and some of them have shown up. So you asked about the homeless one earlier. You can see it closed September 30th, and you can see what that amount was for. And so I just put them in here, all the ESSER funding, things like that, so we are officially done with all of those grants. And that was just kind of an FYI. The final page is just a handful of our state and federal competitive grants. We have a student assistance program grant. We're in our 3rd year of this. We did have it in years prior to that as well. And this directly supports an SAP position at the middle school. That is a substance misuse prevention position. Out of school time, were you raising your hand?
No,
Okay.
sorry.
Our OSTCP grant, this one directly supports our Future Pathways work that Michelle Halligan-Foley, Justin Roy, and a bunch of their people, and Kathy Cotton, they're all leading that work. I think they've been here to present to you guys about it, so I won't go down that rabbit hole. They do a lot with that little bit amount of money. And then the Stronger Connections grant, this is actually one David was referring to earlier. This is what has funded all of our window film and A-phones at some of our schools, the intercom systems, if you will, access control. And that does it for me. Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you guys.
Thank you. And finally, my question to whomever. So as of Monday was the close of month end, and I'm curious as to know what you would prefer and when you would prefer to see your financials and your agenda for the night. Would you prefer to see it with the closing of Friday information, for example? Yes?
Here, you see him shaking his head, yes. Yeah. I guess that's what we'd like to see. They're the finance guy down there, so.
Just make sure you put no for the period of, like, September 1 to, in that case, was what, the 28th?
As of the 20th?
Yep.
Fine. Done.
That way, then when we review it, we know that there's a few days, and then you'll have to, the following month, report on the seals of it.
All right, so if there's no questions on all the stuff we went over, we'll move on to item E, public comment. Seeing no public comment, we'll move on to item F, other. Anything, have any other under finance? Mr. Crismano?
Just give you a heads up, come basically around February, March timeframe, we'll be asking for projected excess of funds as we enter what our equivalent of a 4th quarter would be, and where we would like to see those funds going, and some ideas.
Sure.
And then one for the superintendent, when you get some time, if you could send out what we can actually use the dual settlements for, the required
criteria.
Yes, sorry. And just said it's the board.
Any more? Would you like to respond?
Yeah, please. Mr. Kusmana, would you be okay with what's happening, putting that on the website?
Yeah, that's fine with me. However you wanna get it out.
Ms. Hunter?
Yeah, thanks. I think I should have asked this under operations, but with the new organization of our committees, we didn't have any hirings of custodial staff, kitchen staff. Do we have any personnel items that should have fallen under operations for this month? New hires?
If I may.
Yep.
I don't believe so, but I would defer to David.
No, I don't believe so either.
But moving forward, will we see those under operations committee?
Yeah, so anybody hired for transportation, food services, IT, and facilities would be operations.
Yeah, on some of the categories, in the salary line items, it says exempt, so the individual, what does that mean?
So exempt versus non-exempt. So for example, exempt would be that you have an annual salary regardless of the number of hours that you put in. And non-exempt would be that your salary.
Okay, great. Okay.
Any more under other?
Just to clarify, since we throw in all those questions, operations, health services, IT, do we want to bring that out there in operations as well?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Yep.
Do you mean like bring up a report from those?
Correct, as a mandatory report, just like the bus services.
Yes, anything that if you can get together like with the assistant superintendent, how everything was broken down, how it used to be, is now under operations. But we've moved some stuff over from special services, that used to be under special service under operations. So yeah, even if there's nothing really to put out, just maybe I'll work with, or myself and Mr. Bowie can work with the superintendent, just adding it on here as an item line, but it's just nothing to report on. If there's something.
Yeah.
Just something, nothing to report on, like IT, nothing to report on, just so there's a bullet point, yeah.
It's easy to prepare, I just want to make sure
Myself on the finance side and Mr. Boyer on the operation could work with the superintendent to put on what we're looking for.
But typically, David, we never had monthly reports from IT or health services. They would just come to the committee on an as-needed basis to present specific things, projects. We never received monthly reports from either of those departments.
I think it's gonna be awesome if we do.
Yeah, I have,
Historically,
and I have no problem you changing up how you want to present it, as long as we're getting the info, how you want to present it, that's in your wheelhouse.
Sounds good, thank you.
Anything else on the other? Are we ready? Do we have a non-public? No non-public, so we'll move on. Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Bellows,
Second.
second by Mrs. Harrington. Roll call, please.
Member Bollier?
Yes.
Member Kusumana?
Yes.
Member Bellows?
Yes.
Member Downs?
Yes.
Member Harrington?
Yes.
Member McGowan?
Yes.
Motion passes. We're adjourned.